We are diving into the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act, commonly known as CERCLA, which is a critical topic for the national portion of the real estate exam. CERCLA was established in 1980 to create a federal superfund to clean up uncontrolled or abandoned hazardous waste sites, as well as accidents, spills, and other emergency releases of pollutants and contaminants into the environment. When you see this on your exam, the most important thing to focus on is the three-pronged liability structure that CERCLA creates. These three types of liability are strict, joint and several, and retroactive. Let us break those down because the exam frequently tests your ability to distinguish between them in complex scenario-based questions. Strict liability means that the owner is responsible to the injured party without any excuses. It does not matter if the owner knew about the contamination or if they were the ones who actually spilled the chemicals. If you own the land, you own the problem. The law does not care about intent or negligence. It only cares about ownership. Joint and several liability means that each of the individual owners is personally responsible for the total damages. If there were 5 people who owned a property and 4 of them have disappeared or gone bankrupt, the one remaining owner can be held responsible for the entire cleanup cost. The government does not have to collect a proportional amount from every single person involved. They can simply target the individual with the most assets to pay for the full restoration. Retroactive liability is the third piece of this puzzle. It means the liability is not limited to the current owner, but extends to people who owned the site in the past. This often trips up exam takers because it means someone who sold a property decades ago could still be financially responsible today if hazardous substances were disposed of during their period of ownership. On the exam, watch out for trick wording that suggests a buyer is automatically safe just because they did not personally dump any waste. A common exam trap involves a buyer who performs no environmental due diligence and then tries to claim they are an innocent landowner after the closing. To qualify for the innocent landowner immunity status, a buyer must have conducted an environmental site assessment, specifically a Phase 1 assessment, before they purchase the property. If the Phase 1 assessment reveals potential issues, a more intensive Phase 2 assessment involving soil and water testing is usually required. If a buyer ignores these steps, they are usually stuck with strict liability. You can use the phrase Superfund just reaches to remember the 3 liability types. S is for strict, J is for joint, and R is for retroactive. It reaches back in time, it reaches everyone involved, and it reaches you even if you did not cause the damage. You might see a question asking who is responsible for a site cleanup between a current owner, a past owner, and a tenant. Under CERCLA, the Environmental Protection Agency can target all of them. They do not have to prove that anyone was careless. They only have to prove that a hazardous release occurred. This is why environmental due diligence is a non-negotiable part of modern real estate transactions. When you encounter a question about the Superfund, do not look for an answer that seems fair or based on common sense. Look for the answer that places the burden on the property owners, regardless of fault. The exam wants to see if you understand that CERCLA is designed to ensure the government is reimbursed for cleanup costs by casting a very wide net of liability across anyone who has ever been in the chain of title for a contaminated property. This exhaustive liability means even a bank that forecloses on a property could potentially find itself responsible for environmental remediation if they do not follow specific safe harbor rules. Remember that CERCLA is a federal law and takes precedence in these environmental cleanup scenarios, regardless of most state-level protections. Focusing on the SJR acronym will ensure you can identify the correct liability profile whenever a hazardous waste question appears on your national test.